Hey Frosties! Welcome to an edition of Cooking with Miss Jones back in my kitchen. Alright, dance party over. So today what we are going to make is meat sauce. And we're going to add some veggies to our meat sauce. So our onions and our pepper. We're gonna add some garlic. We have 2 cans of tomato sauce. Again, Trader Joe's didn't have what I needed, so I'm going to puree my tomatoes. This is gonna be tomato puree. I have 1 pound of meat. I got 96% lean and then 4% fat. So that's going to be a lower fat option of ground beef. With this, you could also use ground turkey, ground pork, ground veal. What I like to do sometimes, and they didn't have this at Trader Joe's, is if you mix the 3, if you mix beef, ground veal, and ground pork, it makes a really rich sauce, partially because of the fat. But we are following the MyPlate guidelines, so we are going to do 96% lean, which still is good, don't worry. You just need to add the flavor into it. I also have a pound of whole wheat pasta. So this is an option that you can do. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to roast a spaghetti squash. This is an option if somebody can't eat pasta, if you can't eat wheat, we have spaghetti squash. So I like to do this too. This is really good if you add pesto to it, if you add the meat sauce to it, and then you can add whatever you want. Sometimes add veggies in it. So this is 2 options. It is still good even if you can eat pasta. So we're also going to roast that off. And then for our meat sauce as well, I have fresh oregano. This is not necessary. You can do dried oregano. I just have this outside and there's a lot of it and it keeps on growing. And if I don't use it, it's going to keep on growing. So I am using fresh oregano. We'll talk about how much you need if you are using dried oregano. So let's get started. First thing that we're going to need to do, I'm going to take all of my veggies and I'm going to cut those up first because I'm going to need those for my sauce. So I'm going to wash this off. I'm going to take the 4 stickers that they put on here. I have no idea where there's 4 stickers on here. So I'm going to wash him off. I'm going to get my knife. So when you're cutting a pepper, here's your pepper, okay? You're going to cut your pepper in half like this, and then you'll see this part right here. You don't want to cut up this part. This is no-no. You don't want to eat that. So you take your hand like a claw, and you grab onto it and pull that out like this. Throw it away. Same thing with this one. Grab onto it. And I kind of tap them a little bit so that any of the seeds that are left in there will come out. This one has a little bad spot. I'm going to just cut that part off. Then what we're going to do is we're going to cut this baby into strips. So we want a small dice, pretty small too, because you want it to kind of blend in with the sauce. So if your family prefers not to have green pepper in their sauce, you can leave this out. But this is a great option to add more veggies. So our goal here is adding more veggies, and here is a way that you can do this. Another thing that you can do for your sauce is you can always add other veggies to it too as well. If you make I was going to say marinara sauce, other kinds of meat sauces. You can add things also like carrots. You could add even mushrooms to your sauce, so it adds more veggies to it. And you can always puree your sauce so that it blends in really well. So if you have somebody in your family who maybe doesn't like one of those types of veggies, if you can just blend it, and then that way you can't really taste it. All right, so if you were like, what did she just do? I did that really fast. Well, medium speed. So what we're gonna do, what I like to do is cut all of my peppers into strips like this, because then I'm going to line them all up, so this is a lot more efficient. I'm gonna line them all up like this. I'm going to hold on to all of them with a claw like this. So I'm basically going like this, holding on to them like this, keeping my fingers away from my knife. And I'm just going to rock my knife back and forth on my peppers. So understanding knife skills, understanding how to cut different vegetables is really important in the kitchen, because once you know how to cut vegetables, the options are endless for what you can make. So if you are a little intimidated by that, if that seems a little bit advanced and you've never done that before, try it out. See how it works. If it doesn't work at first, try again another time in another recipe. Because remember, I have done this hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of times. And if this is your first time and it doesn't go as well as I did, it's because I've practiced this hundreds upon hundreds of times. So, try it out. Who knows what can happen? And if it doesn't work, if you don't succeed, try again. That's life. So, next what we're going to do is we're going to cut our onion. I feel like we've cut onions before. We've cut onions before. Yeah, when we did the chicken tortilla soup. So we're going to cut this onion. I'm going to just take some of this paper off. This one has a sticker. It's a giant onion. Okay, I'm going to cut off this end right here. Okay, so always cut off that end. Remember, I don't cut off this end because I want that as my base. So I'm going to line it up because I want a nice flat surface. I always want to try to find that flat surface if I can, whatever I'm cutting. Then I'm going to cut down on my onion. I'm going to take off all the extras on the outside of my onion. I'm going to take off that peel. Oh, half of an onion. Okay, so I'm going to take this last one off. And then what you can do is you can cut it, if you can cut this off, cut this into strips just like we did this one. I do it like this, where I cut in. This can be very dangerous, like doing it that way. So what I suggest you do is just cut down, leaving yourself this back so that you have something to stabilize. Always remember claw and holding on. It's like, it's burning my eyes. It's not that bad, but it's burning my eyes, definitely. All right, one more, and then I'm done. So you can get a bowl if you don't have a big enough cutting board and just put all of your ingredients. Whew, oh man, it's getting bad. I'm gonna turn on. Whew. So again, ways to do this, just cut down on your onion. Onion. Be very gentle with this as you're cutting because you don't want to cut your finger. Don't cut your finger off. So then I'm just going to rock my knife back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And voila! I now have my onion cut, I have my pepper cut. Then I'm going to do 3 different garlic cloves. Ooh, there's garlic paper all over everything. I'm just going to take some of this paper off. Okay, so how I cut up my garlic. I've done this before, I think. If not, I'm showing you again. I'm gonna whack my garlic with the back of my knife, just like that. Cha, cha, cha. There's my garlic. So I'm gonna take the paper off. Off. This paper off. Okay. And then I'm going to mince. So I'm just going to slowly make small slices in there. Again, if you have a garlic press, you can just use your garlic press. So I'm gonna, as I get smaller chunks, I'm going to rock with the back of my knife. So all of my veggies are done. I am going to put these in my pot. I'm going to turn my pot on and we're going to start cooking. Well, pause. No, I'm going to put them in a bowl. Okay, so here is my bowl. I'm just going to put all of this in here. Oh no, it's going off the track. I'm just going to put it in here. So look at veggie. Yes. All that veggie going in the sauce. And then tomato is a fruit / veggie. For those of you who think it's controversial. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you how to cut this baby. So if you want to try using the spaghetti squash instead of pasta, you can do both too. You can try a little bit with the spaghetti squash and then make some pasta too as well if you want to do that. So what you're going to do is I take my knife and I cut right in the middle first. So I push my knife down and then pull it down like that. Then I'm going to twist over to the other side, put my knife in directly where I made my last cut. So there is my knife right there. Okay? And then I'm going to push down and push with all my might down the other side. Then I have this. And you don't want to eat this. This is not good. You could eat the seeds. You could take the seeds out and roast them if you really like those squash seeds or pumpkin seeds. It's the same kind of thing. If you want to put some salt on them, they're really good. I tend to not. It's not my favorite thing. You can even put those in a salad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a spoon and I'm just going to carve all of that as if you're carving a pumpkin. So if you did that before, you're just going to carve all of that gunk out. Now, if you've never had spaghetti squash, it's called spaghetti squash because it comes apart in little sections. Here's like a little section. So instead of other types of squash that will come apart and will be, they almost look like purees when you mash them up, you know, they can be mashed up. This doesn't look like that. This will come apart and it will look like little streaks. So that's why it's called spaghetti squash, because it'll come apart in strings, like spaghetti. I just mopped the floor today, and now it's all over the floor. I'm gonna have to vacuum again. Alright, so that's ready. I'm gonna turn this off. Normally what I do when I turn the fan on is because if you put whatever you're cutting, when it's onions, and you put it right underneath the fan, some of that really intense smell that it lets off and stuff that it lets off will be absorbed up into the fan. So sometimes that's what I do when it's really strong. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take my tray. I'm going to turn on my oven to 375. So I have 4 half cups of spaghetti squash on here. What I'm going to do, on the stove. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little olive oil on this. Then I'm going to take my pastry brush or it's just a brush. I'm going to brush that olive oil all around in there. If yours isn't silicone like this, you notice it's silicone, you can use any kind of brush, doesn't matter. Okay, so I brushed my olive oil all in there. Then what I'm going to do is add a little salt to each one. What that's going to do, the salt is not only going to flavor it, but it's also going to draw out some of the moisture in the spaghetti squash. Just think about it, it's a crystal, so it draws out moisture. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this down on the tray. Some people poke it. I don't. I don't. If I poke it or not, it still turns out the same. So it's just what I do. All right, I'm gonna wait for my oven to heat up. And next, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to cut up my oregano. So if you don't have fresh oregano, I would add about 2 teaspoons to the sauce. I like a really flavorful sauce with a lot of herbs, so I would do 2 teaspoons. Try it and see if you would prefer more in it. If you only want a little bit and then add more, always put the least amount in and slowly add in more herbs if you are unsure of the flavor. So it's okay if you add 1 teaspoon in first to your sauce. Try it, see how the flavor is developing, and then add another teaspoon in. But I would suggest 2 teaspoons total. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm just going to mince it here. I'm going to pause here and then we will pick up and we will make the sauce. So I'm going to pull the camera a little bit closer and we'll add the rest of our stuff to our sauce. All right, welcome back, Frosties. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to put everything into our pan and cook it. First thing we need to do is we're going to cook the meat. So I'm going to turn on my stove to about medium heat, and I'm going to put a little olive oil in my pan. If you don't have olive oil, you can use some type of spray, some type of canola oil. If you have canola oil, you can do that as well. I like to use olive oil, so that's what I'm using. Then I have my pound of ground beef. I'm going to put that in my pan, and the paper's still on it, so I'm just going to take the paper off. And now my hands are dirty, so I'm going to go wash my hands. I'm actually going to turn it up just a little bit so it starts cooking a little bit faster. So I'm washing my hands. Can you hear it sizzling? I am going to get something like this to cook all my meat. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to just dab at your meat. So what I'm doing is I'm just dabbing it. Some heat coming out of it. Some steam, actually. It's because I put that on, I'm going to make a little bit of pasta for when all of that is done. So I'm just going to let this, I'm just going to continually stab my meat. you buy meat in the store, it's going to be that red color, right? So when you cooking your meat, you'll start to see that it's turning brown. You know that it's all done, it's all cooked, when the meat has completely turned brown. So my meat is a little pink. I have a little bit of pink marks. And what I normally do is I just continually do this until it's all kind of cooked and kind of move it around so that it all gets by the heat. You're going to see a lot of moisture or water that's sitting in the bottom of the pan, and that's just from the meat, and it's completely fine. Cook that. Wait until it's all cooked. Ooh, I found a little pinkness. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look nice and brown. You've probably seen this. I'm sure your mom or dad or somebody else in your family has made some sort of ground beef recipe. If not, this is what it should look like. Then what we're going to do next, once all of our meat is cooked, we're going to add all those veggies in that we cut up before. So the garlic, the onions, it's all going in. Okay. I think I'm going to keep this at high because it's looking like it's not really cooking as fast as I wanted it to. So as that is sauteing, there's a lot of veg in there, which is great. Look at all that veg. Mmm. It's smelling good in here. As that's cooking, I'm going to get some pasta so that we can put it in our pot. So remember, I had whole wheat pasta. This is going to be following along with my plate guidelines. So like we learned in my plate, whole wheat is going to be better than white pasta. So today, I am using the whole wheat pasta. I'm just going to do a little bit. Now, whenever you're cooking pasta, there's a lot of theories out there in how to cook pasta. Okay? So, just give that a second. So, when you're cooking pasta, a lot of people say, you know, add oil or add whatever it may be to some weird contraption into your water. You can do that. I have a smaller pot. Normally what I would do whenever I cook pasta is have a large pot of water. I'm only doing a little bit, so I don't really need that much. But having a large pot of water is going to give your spaghetti or your pasta, whatever kind of pasta you're cooking, space so that when you are cooking it, it doesn't stick together. People add oil so that it doesn't stick. If you have enough water in your pot, it won't stick. So if you are using a smaller pot and you're cooking a lot of pasta, that's where something like the olive oil or whatever contraption somebody tells you, that's where the olive oil would be necessary when you put it in there. Otherwise, you don't really need it. One thing I will say is you do want to add some salt to your water. Just like you flavor anything else. Actually, you know what? I never flavored my veggies. So I'm gonna add a little salt. We'll say that's a teaspoon of salt. I added some salt to my water because you want to flavor your pasta. So this might have a little bit of salt in it, but as you're cooking it, you also want to salt your water so that it gives flavor to the pasta, and it'll taste better if it's cooking in salty water. Okay, so one thing I'm going to do today is I'm just going to cut it in half, or I'm just going to break it in half. If I had a larger pot, I wouldn't do that because, again, it has enough water to cook in. So for this, I'm just going to cut it in half and put it in here. What you can do is you can just let it sit over top, and then slowly as it cooks down, you can push with your those little tong things into the water. So there you go. Make sure you flavor your water. Oh my. This is getting pretty hot. Okay, so these are gonna cook a little bit more. So as we're talking, let's talk about this sauce. So I'm giving you two options. Most people know that you eat pasta sauce or meat sauce with pasta, right? It's pretty much a given. But as you're making this meat sauce, there's so many different applications that you can add to it. So it's more than just, I can eat it with just pasta, or I can eat it with the spaghetti squash. You can do things like make lasagna. You could even make lasagna, and you could make, instead of pasta sheets, your pasta sheets could be zucchini or eggplant or something like that, where it can make it healthier, but it's a different version of it. So that's another option that you can do. So once you make this and you think of different ways that you can cook and use that meat sauce, you could even freeze a lot of this and keep it in the freezer, and then that way if you're going to make something, all you have to do is just pull it out of the freezer and your meat sauce is already done. So make a lot of it and then freeze some of it, and then there you go. You have a lot of different options. Alright, so if I was normally cooking this, I would want this to go a little bit longer. But I am just going to add, here's where we're at right now. So basically what I would want is, I would want a lot of the moisture to come out of the veggies. So I'm going to add my sauce right now, and then it's going to cook in the sauce, and some of that moisture is going to come out of the sauce. But in the interest of time, I'm just going to add the sauce to it. Now the key thing with any kind of meat sauce or tomato sauce or pasta sauce is that, remember we have 2 cans of tomato sauce, and then 1 28-ounce can of tomato puree. What you want to remember when you're making any kind of sauce is to let it simmer. So even though I'm adding all of my pasta sauce or my tomato sauce to my meat sauce mixture, I still want this to sit. I would say the least amount of time I would let it sit is about 30 minutes. If you can let it simmer for a little bit longer, that would be best. Okay, so I'm going to stir all my sauces together, and then I'm going to add my oregano. So I'm going to let this simmer. Mine, I'm going to let simmer for probably about an hour at least. And then we'll see how it turns out. The other thing I wanted to do is check on that spaghetti squash, and it is looking mighty good. So there it is. Let me get, I'm just going to use one of these. You can see that it's brown on the outside, and then it's got those brown looks, and when I touch into it, it's pretty soft. So that spaghetti squash is done. I'm actually going to put it back in the oven because I don't have a lot of room on top here. So what I'll do after that's done is I will let it cool when I let it sit off for a little bit. So I'm going to let it cool with the spaghetti squash. Then I'm going to take a fork and I'm just going to run my fork back and forth on the spaghetti squash. And all of those little strands that you saw earlier are going to come out. And then you can just put that on your pasta sauce. So I have that cooking. This is going to simmer. Mine's going to simmer for about an hour, maybe even a little bit longer, as long as I think it should need. And then it'll be done and you can eat it. So I hope you enjoyed this recipe. It's a great recipe for your family. Who doesn't love a good pasta recipe? And a meat sauce at that. It's got all of the things in it. I suggest, if you're doing the spaghetti squash, which you could do as well, if you eat gluten, what you could add is some bread with that. If you are eating the pasta sauce like this, add a salad instead of more carbs, instead of adding more carbs, because you already have the carbs from the whole wheat pasta. Add something like a salad, a light salad, to your spaghetti recipe, and then it's a complete meal. And you can also add a little bit of cheese too as well on it. But make sure you're thinking about those My Plate guidelines, because having healthy meals helps you learn, grow. Remember those articles we talked about. And as you're in school, you really want to make sure that in distance learning, you're sitting all the time. You want to make sure that you're able to think the things that you're putting in your body are good for you and are helping you feel awake, alert, and ready to go. So, till next time, guys, thank you for watching. Bye!